Welcome to Hope After Brain Injury. So good to have you with us to tune in for another segment of lessons to bring hope to survivors of brain injury, to caregivers, family members, friends, so many in the healthcare field. And a special guest I have with me today, we're going to be talking about not only brain injury, but we're taking it from the angle and perspective of exercise. So please welcome to the set today, Dr. Simon Driver.
Thank you, Patty.
Great having you with us.
Yeah.
So how about share with everyone of how maybe our paths cross to kind of bring them in together with who we are and what we're bringing today.
Well, I first met you back in 2014 with your role at Baylor, Scott and White, where you would come to the hospital and visit with patients, and as research director at the time, we kind of connected through there, and I've known you ever since, and you've served on several boards. I get to see you at conferences and meetings. We get to go out for lunch and travel and work professionally with you in kind of that setting, and kind of know how passionate you are about our patients, and really kind of appreciated that connection.
Yeah. Nice. You know, and I think it's wonderful too, Dr. Driver, of how I'm so passionate about patients from my perspective, and how you're passionate about the research that can help the patients, help the families, and what actually drew you into this field or wanting to do this? Maybe in just like a minute, you could break us down there.
Yeah, so my training has been in exercise science, and during my master's degree, my advisor came to me and said, hey, we got contacted by a local rehab program, and they really like an exercise program for some of their patients with brain injury. So I, as an eager graduate student, kind of wanted to apply what I was learning in class. So we created an aquatics program and a gym strength-based training program for people in the community, and they would come into the gym at the university. They would be paired up with an undergraduate student, and we'd collect some data on them, but they'd be exercising. Amazing. And they'd exercise throughout the whole semester. Yeah. And we really saw some great benefits. So all of the things that I was learning about in the books and the journals I was reading, you could actually see happening with real people. And I fell in love with kind of the impact of the exercise on people's lives, and kind of pursued that then into my PhD, and then over the last 15, 18 years of my career.
See,
so
beautiful.
Yeah.
The way things connect, relationships.
Yep, happenstance, yep.
Yeah, I like that. So let's talk about exercise, brain injury and exercise. If you can give us a good idea of actually what is considered exercise, or what is exercise in the world of brain injury, talk with us about that.
Yeah, so a lot of people, when they hear the term exercise, get kind of put off by it, right? Because they might think, oh, I've got to go to the gym, or I've got to be on a treadmill for a certain amount of time, and I've got to sweat, and it's going to be uncomfortable. But exercise can be thought of as any kind of physical activity. So really, movement is important, and that could be gardening, it could be going out to get your mail, or walking to a grocery store, or walking to a neighbor's home, or swimming. It doesn't have to be so structured as thinking of it as being on a treadmill or being in a gym. There are other ways to get activity, doing yard work, any kind of work in your home, but generally being up and moving around regularly is really helpful for your health and beneficial as kind of a form of exercise.
Nice. You know, and speaking of the form of exercise and all the different areas and abilities, what about, because often we think, and can I get a witness here? That when we do exercise, we think about how hard we have to push ourselves in order to, you know, gain some physical exertion or whatever the situation might be. When it comes to brain injury, Dr. Driver, talk with us about the importance of being aware of how far do you push yourself, or how hard do you push oneself when you're wanting to get a benefit or wanting to get a certain result.
Yeah, so it's always important to chat with your healthcare team about exercise and whether it's appropriate for you depending on where you might be in your recovery. But once you have kind of approval, you know, generally moderate intensity exercise is good for your health. And one way that you can kind of gauge whether you're exercising at that intensity is how hard is it, if you're walking with someone, how hard is it to maintain a conversation? So if you're going for a walk around your neighborhood and you're, struggling to talk a little bit, you're probably at a moderate intensity activity, which is kind of where you want to be. And you can kind of grade it from there. So you can start off lightly and you maintain a conversation really easily, and then the faster you get, the harder it gets to keep talking. That's kind of an indicator of how hard you're working. So you can start light, have an easy conversation, pick it up over time, and that conversation gets a little bit harder, but you're working out a little harder, and that's okay.
Yeah. What kind of difference or relevance do you see as opposed to early stages of brain injury, long term? Do you see a differentiation or change?
Typically people can tolerate more, so they'll be able to do more activity over time, but generally any movement is important. So even if you're at the early stages of recovery, you might not be exercising as you were before your injury, but any movement, getting up, walking around your home, helping bring groceries in, up and down stairs in your home, whatever's safe, but movement in general is really important to recovery. And if you can introduce kind of that structured exercise where you might go for a walk around your neighborhood or out to your park, that's really important over time. And you'll find you'll be able to do more over time as you kind of build that endurance.
All right. So the physical exercise, how important? What about cognitive exercise in the midst of trying to be healthy or gain that lifestyle that fits the rhythm of where you are at this certain point, in the recovery of the brain injury?
So brain training.
Okay.
Yeah, brain training is really important. There are lots of different strategies that you can use for that. It's the same as it's any kind of fitness, right? You kind of would improve with it over time, so it's something you can introduce. And it's definitely a good complement to physical exercise, cognitive training. So,
I think it's amazing how they really do fit together, how it's kind of that holistic approach, being aware of different things outwardly, inwardly, that kind of affect a person.
Yeah, and there's so many great technologies through video and online training where you can actually combine, if it might be with a Wii or a Nintendo device, you can actually do some brain training and exercise training at the same time, which
great
is
coordination.
Really neat. Yeah. So lots of great tools out there and things to explore.
Yes, and I think before we wrap up this segment, I want to be sure and talk about some of those wearable devices, because I've heard different people mention those to talk about brain injury and how different things can help us there.
Yes.
But before we get to that, hold that thought, please. Go back to, exercise, talking about walking, and especially as COVID-19 has changed the rhythm of a lot of lives and places and abilities. Talk with us about that potential role that a family member or friends can have in the whole exercise gamut for a brain injury survivor at any mark along that road of recovery.
Yeah, so friends and family are really important for anyone exercising, but they become very, very important for people after a brain injury. Maybe people have trouble with transportation, they're not able to get around us, so they kind of rely on other people to help them. So those social relationships are really important to kind of help with the exercise. It's great if you have a friend that you can exercise with. Again, you can kind of walk out around your neighborhood. You can, a lot of friends now, because they can't necessarily be with friends and family, use Skype or FaceTime while they're out walking, and their friend, where they're in another city or another location, is on FaceTime and walking with them, which is kind of a nice way to connect.
And it makes time go by quicker, and
Absolutely.
you're like, oh, I did so much more. Yeah, and you enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
You don't realize how strenuous it might be at that moment, that positive influx of things. Now, there are also some things that you've mentioned, different things to consider, when exercising from a brain injury standpoint. Sometimes we have to pay attention to what we eat or drink or the equipment. Sometimes things have to be modified. or change to some certain status. Talk with us about those different various things to be considered.
Yeah, it's really important to kind of understand your new abilities and
Yes.
what some limitations might be, and how you
Yeah.
could adapt your exercise environment to really suit your needs. You might have, some challenges with balance or how long you can exercise for.
Right.
So there are different kind of strategies to use to take more breaks, to have more water with you, to exercise with a friend who can provide support, or have modified equipment to kind of make that possible. But
Right.
kind of exploring with your healthcare team about what those modifications would be is a really important discussion.
What are some questions that we could ask the healthcare team that might help us better kind of focus the exercise to fit our particular situation?
Around physical function, perhaps,
Right.
kind of what aids there might be for balance or
Okay.
fatigue, how long you might exercise, what kind of rests and breaks you might take, what needs you might have for, kind of strength, what might be modified exercises. You might move a little differently now, and that's okay, but just understanding what exercises might work for you now you move a little differently or think a little differently.
Nice, nice. Well, there's so much more that we could talk about, but we're about at the end of this segment. But why don't we pick up and we'll enjoy and have Dr. Adams to join us. And maybe we can talk about some more kind of those areas of exercise and things that are progressive to help us along the path, and the wearable devices. I really want you to talk more about that. So I'll give you this segment as we break into this next time with Dr. Adams. But for this time, thank you very much. So we'll continue with brain injury and exercise on our next segment. I'm Patty Foster, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate your energy. I appreciate your focus, because I know for all of us as brain injury survivors, attention is not always easy. And to maintain that focus is certainly not easy, no matter where you are along the stage of recovery. So I cheer you on to keep on keeping on. And that Dr. Adams will be joining us soon, and she's the founder of Hope After Brain Injury. So we'll bring on Dr. Adams with Dr. Driver and myself, and we'll talk more about brain injury and exercise. See you then.